Okay, I got ya. I'll do my best.
Okay.
Right, ready? Right. Sorry, I'm not. I'm already a bit giddy. Right, okay, we'll try and stay calm. Okay. Hello, and welcome to Why This Film, the podcast...
A stellar start. Not as easy as it looks, Benham?
How's it pronounced? Podcast. There we go. Felt natural as it came out. Oh, alright, let's try that again. Hello, and welcome to Why This Film, the podcast where usually we would reach back into your childhood and pluck out a movie. But it's a very special occasion today because it's the 100th episode. Whoop whoop. I'm not Emily Slade, but I have her with me. Welcome back.
Oh, well, thank you. It's good to be here on my own podcast.
You're a frequent guest of this podcast.
I've been on many an episode, yes.
So, your 100th episode, how do you feel?
I know, bloody hell. I feel like genuinely, just something gets super real super early on. What? So many people have emailed me to be like, congratulations, that's insane. And I'm like, you know what? That is insane. How? How have I done this?
I'll tell you how. It's because you've been dedicated and you've worked hard and you love films.
I do love films. I have been focused. I have been time-consuming. Before I deep dive into that, though, thank you, Flo Benham.
Hi, I'm Flo Benham.
Hosting.
We should redo this intro. I'm like a mystery woman.
Thank you. So Flo is hosting today, which is super fun. But I'm just going to deep dive back into, patting myself on the back for reaching the 100th, because there was a time back in 2017, you and I were living together in Twickenham in a gorgeous little bungalow, and that's when I started this podcast, and I would go to my temp job in an office and work 9 to 5, and then I would get on the tube and I would go to random places in London with my microphone, which is absolutely insane when you consider now how easy it is to do a podcast during a pandemic.
Why didn't we think about this beforehand?
And I would physically go to these people's houses, these lovely, lovely people that invited me into their houses. And I mean, shout out to Ryan and Kate. Every time I went around theirs, they would give me food. They would make the most delicious food. And then we would sit and talk about films. And then I would come back home by midnight. And then I would get up, I would go to work, and the whole thing would repeat. And I would just whack out episode after episode. And it's bizarre how relentless it kind of was. And that was very early on. And then I took a break when I went to drama school. And then, I resurrected it and sort of essentially did the same thing. But the global pandemic hit. If we're going to take one good thing from the global pandemic, it'll be that I discovered Zoom. And I was able to connect with a bunch of people from abroad as well, which was really, really lovely. I've got really dear friends now that live in different countries that I've met through this podcast and through Zoom, essentially, and Skype. And why the hell I didn't think to record remotely before 2020 is beyond me. But yeah, and I did that enough times that now I've hit literally 100, which actually makes me a little bit exhausted. I'm sweating a little bit just from the thought of it.
It's a good number. It's a perfect number. If you want to retire now, actually, that would be I'm hosting today, and I'll be happy to just continue if you like. Well, it's your 100th episode, which is very exciting, and as a thing to celebrate it, and the reason I'm hosting is that we've asked people for questions, and we're doing a sort of podcast AMA type thing. So we told people, ask Emily anything. What do you want to know? And I'm going to ask you these questions.
I'm so excited because I love talking. It's partly why I started a podcast. All I want to do
is be asked about myself.
I just want to be asked questions. I just want to be asked my opinion on stuff,
Great. Well, hopefully you will enjoy this then. Right, let's get started.
Woo!
Okay, so the first question I have for you is from Anne and Ali from the Girl Crush podcast.
I love them so much. They're so lovely and they're so great. Please go and follow them and listen to them. I love them so much.
Shout out to Anne and Ali. Their question is, what inspired you to start Why This Film?
Okay, so genuinely, I always wanted to talk about movies. I knew that was a thing that I wanted to do. But I also knew that I couldn't be fucked to make my face look nice enough for YouTube. And that was really the only way I knew people discussed movies on YouTube.
Because you're a big fan of like
huge
YouTube series that talk about movies and shows.
Huge fan. I would rather watch that than a series of television. Like, that is my go-to entertainment. And it's what I wanted to do, but I knew that I also couldn't be bothered to be like, oh God, video, ew. So I was like, well, what's the opposite of video? Like, audio, I guess. And I'd listened to like one podcast, maybe two podcasts, literally like two podcasts. And I was like, podcasts are a thing. So I asked for a microphone for my birthday and I got one. And a year later, I picked it up and I was like, maybe I should use this. And yeah, and I don't know how I came up with the idea, but the inspiration was genuinely just, I want to talk about movies and I want to do it on my own terms and in my own time, and therefore I will. And podcast was the only option because I didn't want to be on video, basically.
Nice. It's just calling to you.
Yeah.
Okay, now I've got a question from AJ from the She's So Real podcast.
I love her. Her podcast is amazing. It's all about women in the industry of like film. She's glass ceiling breaking, progression pushing. She's so funny. She's so wonderful. Please go and listen to her podcast.
Okay. She asked, what guest and film did you enjoy the most on your show?
Oh no, that's so awful. I can't pick a favourite. Oh my God, there's 100 to choose from. Come on, this isn't fair. Oh man, literally impossible. There's been so many good ones. Do I have to answer this question?
Stop. No, like, stop it. I'm not having this cowardice. Answer the question.
Okay, let me think. Okay, I love absolutely every single one of you, but if I have to pick an absolute favourite, I really, really genuinely love talking about Small Soldiers to Lewis, because he is so funny, but he was also so thoughtful, and it really genuinely felt nostalgic talking about that movie, because it's such an odd little movie that everyone's always like, oh yeah, I remember that exists. And it was exactly, like, it was on brand. Do you know what I mean? Like, that episode felt so on brand, and because of that, it was so enjoyable. And Lewis is such a delight anyway. And so much stuff was said that never even made it into the episode that I now have as a memory that's just really sweet. So if I had, gun to my head, if I had to pick, it would be that one.
Oh, okay. Okay, next question we have is from Melissa from the Follow Your Fire podcast.
Okay, like, I don't mean to do this sort of like interlude of like, here's who this person is and this is why I love them. Melissa was such a fluke of meeting, and she's been one person that I talk to at least like once a week. Like we're best friends now. Like, that's really all I have to say about that.
Her question was, what have you learned about yourself in the process of recording 100 episodes?
Ooh. Okay, just to like toot my own horn a little bit. People say I have a good energy, and that's something that's really lovely to hear, because growing up, when you're opinionated or loud, that is often referred to as obnoxious and annoying and shut up, Emily, nobody cares. So it's really lovely to be able to be myself in such a raw way and have people respond to it positively and be like, this is really fun. I love talking to you. Like, you're doing it great. And I'm like, haha, hair flick. Speaking of Melissa, here she is now.
Why This Film podcast really brings up nostalgia for most of us. And speaking of nostalgia, have you ever wondered what your mom was like before you were born? Have you ever asked her questions like, what were you afraid of as a kid? Or, if you could choose your last words to me, Mom, what would they be? These are big and small questions, and ones you might not really think about until you can't ask them anymore. Hi, I'm Melissa, huge fan of Why This Film podcast, and I'm bringing all this up because after losing my mom unexpectedly, I realized how many things about her life and opinions and our family I didn't know or just didn't remember. So instead of just sitting on my pity pot, I wrote a journaling book that I can fill out for my daughters and you and your mom can fill out. It's called Questions You'll Wish You Asked, a time capsule journal for mothers and daughters. The book is available on Amazon, or you can call your local bookstore and ask them to order it for you. Ask those questions. Write down your answers. Your future self will thank you, I promise.
I've got a question now from David, who's from the podcast Two Actors Walk Into a Bar, who I believe was on your previous episode.
Yes, the 99th quiz. David's great. David was a stranger on the internet who agreed to be on my podcast. He's wonderful. I love him. Like, that's not to be like, full stop.
Full stop.
That's
Nothing
all there
more
is
to
about
say.
him. No, I love him. He's so supportive and wonderful. And he introduced me to his girlfriend, who is all of the above times 3.
Oh, yeah. Love
I
Hannah.
love Hannah so much.
The approval rating through the roof. So we've got 2 questions that sort of match. What's the one film that you hate that everyone seems to love?
Right, fucking Blade Runner.
Okay, and why?
Because I don't understand why people love this. There is a rape scene in Blade Runner and it's ghastly and it's between the 2 characters that I think we're meant to like and sympathize with. I couldn't even get to that famous monologue where he's like, I improvised it and I'm a genius. Something about tears in the rain or whatever. Because I was so like oohed out by what was happening in front of me. And before that as well, I was just fundamentally bored. But so many people seem to hold it in such high regard.
Yeah. I guess it just really didn't like speak to you.
Yeah, I was just like, I'm out.
And then also from David, what's the one film that you love that everyone else seems to hate?
Dragonheart.
Never seen it.
Oh my god.
Actually, I think you watched it once when I was in the house and I like didn't stay in the room.
Right, real talk. And I know David did the Dragonheart episode and because fun fact about David, when we were first exchanging emails about what film he would like to do, his very first suggestion was Dragonheart because he and his friends had recently gotten together to rewatch Dragonheart because they all recalled it from their childhood and they rewatched it on the understanding that it would be trash. And they were met with They thought they were absolutely correct. They rewatched it and they were like, yes, this is trash. Haha, what a fun evening we've all had watching this trash movie. Dragonheart, without crying, Dragonheart is so important to me. It is so good. It is such a good movie. And I honestly do not understand why everybody hates it.
But let's get into that for a minute. Why do you like it so much?
Right. Every single character is a fucking gem. The cast is incredible. The CGI of Sean Connery as the dragon was groundbreaking. The story is intriguing. It is proper hardcore like medieval sword and sorcery fantasy with like weird bits of comedy thrown in. You know I love a tonal problem.
You do. You love a tonal problem.
Bloody love a tonal problem.
You love it when you're not sure how to feel.
Don't know how to feel. Is this funny? Is this sad? Is this tragic? Is this elated? Like, I don't know. Dragonheart has that the whole way through. Is this about a peasant uprising? Is this about a dragon and a knight doing like a con? Love it. Dunno. Love it. The main no one kisses. There's no, like, relationships. There's only, like, creepy, predatory relationships, which, again, I'm a fan of.
Yeah. We
I
won't
don't
get
know
into
why.
that now. We went into that on Thumbelina, it's fine.
And Labyrinth.
And Labyrinth. And probably we'll do Sword in the Stone at some point, and then that'll come up again. Sorry, I mean Quest for Camelot.
Yes.
Not
Quest for
Sword in the
Camelot.
Stone.
I was going to say, I was like, the
What,
squirrel?
Merlin and what? No, we'll do Quest for Camelot at some point.
We will
and that
100%
get
do
again
Quest for
into.
Camelot. Love Dragonheart so much. It had a brilliant female character. It does not... Wait.
Uh-oh.
I think it does pass the Bechdel test. Genuinely, please go watch Dragonheart. And you know what? If you hate it, you hate it. And I will never understand why. But if you want to tell me, why this film podcast at gmail.com.
Brings us brilliantly to one final question from David, which is
Woo-hoo!
simply, you can get a nice short answer for this. Have you ever wanted to hit a guest for trashing a film you loved?
Yes, it's David.
And was that film Dragonheart?
Yes.
There you go. Okay, next we've got a question from Tess.
I loved her so much.
She asked, what film would you love to review but haven't yet?
Ooh! I mean, Quest for Camelot is 100% up there. Like, it's been teased every now and then with people being like, oh, maybe this one. But it's one that was very, very important to me as a young person. And I believe you as well.
Yeah, I loved Quest for Camelot as, a kid, like, obsessed with it. Would play it on repeat.
Super obsessed.
Tess also asks, would you ever be open to a Labyrinth remake?
No.
Short but sweet. And finally from Tess, what animated film needs a live action adaptation? And then she's added second after Anastasia, of course.
Ooh!
I think she was guessing there what you would be thinking. And actually I agree, Anastasia is probably up the top, isn't it?
Anastasia's really interesting because it is not at all historically accurate, but it's a wonderful, wonderful movie, and I think a live action version would be brilliant. They made a stage show that kind of had nothing to do with the animated movie, so if they were to make a live action movie, I would want them to stick closer to the Don Bluth movie. No, I can't say The Hunchback of Notre Dame. It wouldn't work. Even though it's probably on the way.
Like, how could you do that? No.
How could you? You wouldn't be able to. It works so well from being animated.
Yeah, you can't have a real man like CGI scaling the Notre Dame and stuff.
Sorry, I'm taking so long. I'm like, you know when Sherlock goes into his fucking stupid mind palace
He's
and it's
sitting
like
with like 10 different laptops in front of him because he doesn't know that you can open more than one tab. And...
yeah, he's like, how do tabs work? I need another laptop. Right. Sorry, Tim Burton. Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Be better.
A better remake.
Be better. Do it properly. Don't make her like 29 and engaged. Like, do it properly.
Lovely. Okay, good answer. So you also asked people to send in sort of memories of like time they spent on the podcast and stuff. And so since we got to the end of Tessa's questions, I'll read Tessa's memory. She says, my favourite memory on why this film is meeting the lovely Emily. I've mentioned this to you before, but I love that our first conversation together is recorded. Look at us now, on the road to Friends for Life. Proud of you, darling. Keep making magic.
Oh,
That's very nice. I'll do another memory from Anne and Ali from the Girl Crush podcast. They said, we had a blast on our Little Rascals episode. You were one of the first times guesting on another podcast, and we had so much fun, especially talking about a movie that would never land on our own podcast. Thanks for creating such a welcoming, warm, and fun show.
Oh, that's so sweet. I had such a good... Little Rascals was the kind of movie that... This is why I love doing this podcast. It's the kind of movie that I would never, ever, ever, ever have watched in my own time, space... continue, like it would never have crossed my borders, as it were, as a person. And they brought it into my life, and it was such a joy to watch, and they were such a joy to talk to, and I'm so happy that they had a good time. Their podcast is amazing. They have a whole first season about Jennifer Aniston movies, and they're moving on now to Sandra Bullock movies. And they're such a joy to listen to. I genuinely recommend them so much. I love them.
So I have 2 more questions from them, from the Girl Crush podcast. They asked, which film has been your biggest negative surprise to revisit?
Ooh, okay. Okay, springs to mind Thumbelina, because I loved this movie so much, and then I watched it with you, Florence, and you were like, hey, this movie highlights a bunch of issues that I've noticed about being a friend for several years.
We'd been drinking a lot in Venice, so I think maybe I got too real when I was like, I really think now's the time for me to just dish this all out. Anne and Ellie also asked, what has been the most positive surprise for films that you revisited?
Aww. I mean, there was some really genuinely happy moments to revisit, like when AJ came on and chose E.T. I was super pumped because I was like, I rarely watch E.T. and I'm so happy to watch this because I know it's going to be so good, and it was so good, and we had such a brilliant conversation. But in terms of surprise, it's not come out yet. It's going to come out in the next season. So this is a little bit of a teaser for the next season. So I hadn't seen this movie since I saw it in cinemas. And I don't know the dates off the top of my head, but I was probably around 10, if not under, when this came out in cinemas. And therefore I clearly had no idea of what was happening. And I rewatched the Rugrats movie with my sister, of all people, recently. And it's coming out in the next season. And we were just watching it to be nostalgic. To be like, oh, we watched this in cinemas when we were kids. And it was fun. And we remember that bit with the monkeys. And it was great. And then we rewatched the movie. And we were like, oh my god. This is incredibly emotional as siblings, as moviegoers, as animation lovers. Like, it's just so intense emotionally, and we were not prepared for it. It was a drinking game, and I haven't listened to it back yet. So it would probably be us two going, this movie so good. Yeah, that was a shock to the system.
Nice. That sounds fun. I'm going to do a couple more memories now, if you don't mind. So this one was submitted from David from the Two Actors Walking to a Bar podcast. He said, so I've never actually told you this, but I was actually drunk when I asked to come on your podcast. Normally, if you see a total stranger on social media, posting in groups and asking for people to meet them in London under the guise of a podcast, you would probably think, I'll steer clear of that. #stranger danger. It was only when I sobered up the next day I realised, I guess I'm going on a podcast now. Anyway, I'm glad I did, as I went from being that stranger on the internet to someone you can now call a friend.
Oh my god, that's so funny, because literally at the same time, I thought he was like... I think I told you at the time, I was like, okay, so this guy's responded online, and like, I have no idea who he is, I have no idea where he lives, I'm gonna meet him in a public place in case he tries to murder me, and like, if he murders me, will you please call the police?
I remember being very aware of where you were going like, I had all the info in my phone, like...
I will be in Kentish Town in a Cafe Nero at 6 p.m. That's so funny that the either end of that spectrum was
both people being like, oh no,
oh god, we're going to get murdered, and instead we had a really lovely conversation about Pirates of the Caribbean 3.
And he went on to say, "You're a great friend who has always been on hand to offer support and advice, and you provided much needed entertainment during the first lockdown, pouring so much passion and work into your podcasts and lockdown quizzes that help prevent us from losing our sanity." And Flo will add to that, like the lockdown quizzes were really fun. He says, "I've always loved coming to your podcast, and I really value the friendship we now have because of it, even if I nearly fucked it all by saying Dragonheart was shit. Congrats on your first 100 episodes. Here's to hundreds more."
Oh, what a babe!
What a babe. AJ, again from She's So Real podcast, asked, "What are your top 3 movies?"
Ooh, okay, number 1, Dragonheart. Oh, it's hard because I always do things in no particular order, but I'll probably have to, off the top of my head, go The Red Shoes and Labyrinth.
Okay, The Red Shoes and Labyrinth. Understood. Okay, Naomi Robson.
I love her. She's so wonderful. She's got an episode coming out in the next season. She's genuinely a fucking ray of actual sunshine. Like the sun actually landed on Earth and then returned to the sky, but on its departure left an actual ray of sunshine, and then it blossomed into Naomi.
She asked, "Who's your favourite Disney princess and why?"
Okay. Maybe controversially, it is Tiana from The Princess and the Frog. And I now know that she was perhaps not the greatest representation of Black culture and Black people as she could have been, because all of the writers and all of the writers' room and all of the producers and all of the directors and even the composer were white on her movie, which is genuinely just not acceptable, especially in this day and age, and just not acceptable. Her story, her personality, her look, her outfits, her prints, her sidekicks, her music, everything about that movie I fell in love with. I really did. And I just love her hard work ethic, and I love how she is as a princess. I love her prints. I adore her. But I do understand on the flip side of that they could have done a lot better in what they were trying to do. But as a princess, she is my favourite. She has replaced Belle, and she is my favourite.
Yeah. Okay.
So during the editing process, we did have some more questions come in, which I'm super excited about. We got this lovely message from Corey.
Hey, Emily. It's Corey from Podcasting After Dark. I just wanted to say congratulations on 100 episodes, and here's to 100 more. If you ever want to talk about Legend, you know where to find me.
Oh, I do indeed. Any Legend fans need to definitely tune in next season, as I'm so excited to be returning to it with Corey. So more on that later. So Dermot, who you can hear on the Jaws episode, has asked, what is your favourite quote from a film? Okay, top of my head, it's gotta be the whole little monologue from Labyrinth where she's like, "Through dangers untold and hardships unnumbered, I have fought my way here to the castle beyond the Goblin City to take back the child you have stolen. For my will is as strong as yours, and my kingdom as great. You have no power over me." It's just so good. It's just so good. It completely swept me up as a child. I was like, that is the most magical, inventive thing I've ever heard. And as an adult, it's just sort of stayed with me in terms of yeah. It's just really poetic and really fun. And I know it off by heart. And I just love it. Gemma also sent in a memory. It was great to be able to sit and talk about my favourite film with a like-minded film fan. I've since started watching as many shark-related films as I can. The last 2 Sharknadoes are pretty spectacular for all the wrong reasons. Oh my goodness, I caught the very last Sharknado where they like hop back, they're like doing Back to the Future, but like throughout, but also like Time Bandit at Bill and Ted. Like, it's honestly, it was incredible. I'm so happy that you're perusing through the fantastic array of shark cinema that there is to enjoy. Oh my goodness, so much, and they're all great. And Elwood Jones from the Asian Cinema Film Club asks, what's the one movie from your childhood you would rather forget? Okay, it's probably something that gave me the like heebies and or jeebies that genuinely I've probably already pushed from my brain. I was a very frightened child. Like, everything would scare me. So there was almost definitely a movie at some point that was too scary, that I have just wiped from my brain. And the second it unfortunately returns to my head in a moment of blind panic and fear, I will let you know. But great question.
We have a question from Cold Callers Comedy now.
Paul and Ryan, they've recently had a single out. Go and listen to it. It's brilliant. They are both two very talented and very funny guys.
They asked, we know you loved Queen Amidala's outfit in Phantom Menace.
What did?
End of question. But what film has, in your opinion, the best costumes?
Oh, that's such a good question. Okay, don't come for me. Labyrinth.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Labyrinth has great costumes because they manage to put Sarah, the contemporary character, in an outfit that is both 80s and also kind of semi-weird, medieval-ish fantasy. Jareth, with his, 9 costumes, is obviously iconic because it's David Bowie and he looks brilliant in anything. You could put him in a bin bag and he would look fantastic. And then you've got the characters within the labyrinth that do have this sort of Dungeons and Dragons, magi. Is that a thing? Magi?
Magi?
I'm
not sure how it's pronounced.
That's sort of magic-y, The Mummy 1999-esque, it's just a vibe. The whole of the labyrinth is a vibe. And I dig that.
So I have no real thoughts about the costumes from Labyrinth, but I really like the dog puppet they did, so I agree. So off the back of that question, some more memories. Ryan from the Cold Callers Comedy said that his favourite moment was that when you were talking about lizards in Godzilla, you were getting so worked up that you nearly fainted. You said it was low blood sugar, but I know it was the lizards.
Oh my god. So, I think from what I recall, we ended up talking about, what if giant lizards attacked? And, how would we feel about that? And all I could think of was Komodo dragons.
Yeah,
and
you hate them.
I don't even feel like this is real talk. I don't even feel like this is something that I need to justify because Komodo dragons are genuinely leftover dinosaurs. They're recycled dinosaurs and they spit poison and they are just awful.
I think they're great.
And they move like horrible dogs. The mean dogs.
Dogs with broken elbows.
Dogs that are ruined but they move really quickly and mainly, possibly it's because of that Journey to the Center of the Earth movie that came out in the 1950s that had blown up Komodo dragons as the main enemy and they were in the green screen at the back and the fainting Victorian woman was ah! at them. And maybe that's why I'm frightened of them. Also, though, maybe that has nothing to do with it, and Komodo dragons are just genuinely leftover dinosaurs, should be extinct, do not deserve their own island, and suck generally. And Godzilla kind of reminded me of them,
I
and
like them a
therefore
lot. I think they're like you said. I think they're like scaly dogs, and I'm like, yeah, I want to pet that thing on its little head.
No, and no.
So this is from Lauren from Woof Republic.
Like, I was a little bit starstruck when I spoke to her because she's so cool and legit, and she's just wonderful. So look up Woof Republic, especially if you're a big fan of dogs. Genuinely do, especially if you're in the US. She's wonderful, and I love her. And we talked about Homeward Bound, and it was so much fun.
Lauren said, I loved doing your show and talking about Homeward Bound because it allowed me to rewatch a favourite movie from my childhood and look at it with fresh adult eyes. The things that you pick up as a grown-up versus how you perceive or take things as a kid are astonishing. I also fully love that Emily allowed me to geek out over my love of Sally Field as a voice actor of Sassy the Cat in this film. Emily has such an incredible presence and is such a great host. Love this show, and I'm so excited to see what she does with her next 100 episodes.
So cute. Genuinely, Sally Fields is an incredible voice actress.
I had no idea that was Sally Fields.
Right?
And I love Sassy the Cat. Melissa from Follow Your Fire podcast asked, what actor would you go absolutely gaga to meet?
Okay, so whilst I think of an answer to that question, I'm going to give you a short story about a genuine actor that I met that I genuinely went gaga for, and it was super embarrassing. So this is my Graham Norton story. So if you ever see me on Graham Norton, spoiler alert, you're going to have already heard this story. I went to the Pinter on Pinter, which was for the anniversary of, Harold Pinter, doing some Harold Pinter plays at the Harold Pinter Theatre. One time, we would always sneak downstairs to the stalls afterwards because they would always be having an after party with all of the stars, and it would be the people that had appeared in the play and people that had appeared in other plays, because they would do like 4 plays a night, and it went on for like 6 weeks or whatever. And I was downstairs in the stalls with a couple of my friends talking to Martin Freeman like it was no deal, like it was nothing. I was like, oh, hey, Martin Freeman, how do you interpret the Harold Pinter play that you were just in as? And then my friend tapped me on the shoulder and she was like, Emily, I've got Tamsin Greek. And I was like, what? And she was like, I've got Tamsin Greek. And I was like, okay. And she turned me around and I was face to face with Tamsin Greek. And for some reason, even though I had just been talking to literal Bilbo Baggins, speaking to Jackie from the Friday night dinner, all of a sudden I was overcome with what I can only assume is starstruckness. And in my head, I was like, do not tell her that you're a massive fan of her. Do not tell her that you love her. Do not tell her that you adore her and everything that she's in and that she's fabulous. Do not do that. Be cool. Be cool. Be cool. And I was like, okay, self. Noted. And she went, hello. And I went, hi. I love you. I'm a huge fan. I think you're amazing. I think you're incredible in everything that you're in. And I just told myself to not say that to you. But I just did. And I really just think you're amazing. I really think I think you're amazing. I just think you're amazing. And she was like, what do you do? And I was like, I'm in drama school. And she was like, don't let them change you. And I was like, what? Sorry, what? And she was like, don't let them change you. And I was like, oh, That's such good advice. Like, no, seriously, that's really good advice. Thank you so much, because I'm gonna write that down. Such good advice. That's really good. And she went, I'm gonna go. And I was like, yeah, go. Just go.
Oh no.
Leave me.
Nice, good advice.
Genuinely good advice. I genuinely did write it down. And if I ever see Tamsin Greek again, I'm gonna be like, hi, I've never met you before in my entire life.
And I would never ever tell you the story.
I will never repeat this. I can't even remember what the question was, but that's just a little story about me and Tamsin Greek that I am genuinely embarrassed about, that I feel like I needed to say here, so I didn't spurt it out when I'm on Graham Norton. And he's like, so Tamsin Greek is here and Emily Slade is here and the two of you have met previously, and Tamsin Greek would be like, huh, when? And I would have to be like,
I've got an embarrassing one. I went to see Spring Awakening several times when it was in London for, I think, the first time, although I don't know. And Ewan Ryan was he played Moritz in Spring Awakening. This was before he was famous for being in like Game of Thrones and Misfits and whatnot. And he was signing stuff outside, and we were all in a queue to see like a bunch of people around him trying to get him to sign tickets and stuff. And my pen was broken, and I handed him my ticket, and I thought my friend was stood right next to me holding their pen out. So I like yanked the pen out of their hand and like gave it to him to sign the ticket, and he gave me a look, and I was like oh, thanks, and he signed it and gave it back to me, and I went to give the pen back to my friend, and it was a complete stranger, a girl staring at me with a face like, how fucking dare you, and I just yanked her pen away from her and fucking stolen it to get an autograph. And that was very embarrassing. It was awful. I'd gotten separated from my friend in the crowd and hadn't realised, and what I thought was a friendly little borrowing was actually like a horrible aggressive attack.
Aggressive theft.
Oh god. So AJ and Melissa both had similar questions, which was to do with where do you see your podcast going in the future, in like the next year or so?
Kind of more of the same. I am starting a new podcast with a completely different topic. I do have a like, I don't know what you would call it, like a sub podcast happening coming May this year of this podcast to look out for, but otherwise just very much more of the same, because I just really enjoy talking to people about their childhood.
AJ also asked, what should we expect in the next season?
Oh my god, so much good stuff. So we're returning to Bollywood, having visited it for Lagan. So we're doing that. We're going back to some 80s fantasy animation, which I had never experienced before, from a film company that I'm super pumped about. So we're doing that. It's super exciting. You and me, Flo, we're gonna dive deep. We're gonna dive deep into some Nolan.
Oh, excited for that. Yeah. I know
Very excited.
You spoke about Inception a bit on one podcast, and when you came back, I know you and I got really deep into a conversation, which was like, here's all the things I would have said if I was there, and you were like, here's all the things I would have said, and so I'm really excited to do that conversation with you. I'm also excited for it because it's one of the few things I know of where you and I like quite severely disagree, to the point where I disrespect your opinion.
So that's just really the next season. In terms of the next sort of where the podcast is going, like, who knows, man?
Who knows? I'll do one more memory, just a quick one. Josh from the CCC podcast.
Josh, go and check out the CCC podcast. And they're just really, really great. So please go and do check them out. And Josh is such a joy to talk to. He's so passionate. I love him.
I was just going to ask what CCC stood for.
Comics, culture, and cosplay.
Oh.
It's Josh, Mari, Kevin, and Zach. And they're brilliant.
Nice. Josh said, so something I love about your show is the engaging conversation between you and your guests. There is a constant back and forth and wonderful rapport combined with the interesting facts and tidbits about each respective movie that filter through the conversations. It's very nice. Right, we've got 2 final questions. They're both from Melissa from Follow Your Fire podcast. She had some really great ones. She asked, have you ever thought about quitting and why didn't you?
Oh my gosh, what a great question. I've not to be a dick, but genuinely I've never even thought of quitting because I love the sound of my own voice. And I know that, I don't know, there's something in me that I'm like, yo, even if I can't get strangers to convince to come on my podcast like David, there will always be Flo, and there will always be my sister that I can coerce somehow into coming on. And there will always be that this conversation will always exist, and I will always be there to record it regardless of who I'm having it with. Does that make sense? So I've never even considered quitting because it's not. This is just how I am. This is what I do in real life.
Pastime, I guess.
Absolutely. So even if I was with Flo and I would just start a conversation and she would just join in, I would press record somehow, somewhere on some device. It would happen regardless of the above, all of the above. Because it's kind of fundamentally who I am and what I end up doing inevitably. So yeah, no is the short answer to that.
Wow. And then another question from Melissa, which I thought was really great. So we've spoken about where you see your podcast in a year or so. What are your dreams for yourself in 5 years?
This is why she's such
Let's get into it.
Wonderful life coach. She's such a great life coach. Please, everyone, go sign up to her sessions. She's so wonderful. In 5 years' time, I'm going to be on the Graham Norton Show because I'll have had a film out that's based in Suffolk. My podcast currently, my Why This Film podcast, will be thriving. My Suffolk-based podcast that's coming out in a couple of weeks' time will be thriving. And I will be thriving. And I will be the Fern Cotton to the generation that I was when Fern Cotton was on the Smile show. You gotta say it, manifest it. That's what's happening.
Manifest it, yeah. Brilliant. Well, I have one memory left for you, again from Melissa. That's lovely.
So much.
She said, when I agreed to come on Why This Film podcast to talk about one of my favourite movies of adolescence, Now and Then, I didn't really expect anything other than to have an excuse to do something kind of indulgent, watch a movie only I wanted to watch and actually pay attention to it, something I'll admit I don't do a lot as a mum. But paying attention to and talking about this movie brought up way more about my own memories and dreams than I ever would have realised before. Emily was great about allowing us to go on these movie-related tangents that helped explain why the film had such an impact on me, on culture and on life. Recording this episode reminded me that just like there are no small parts and only small actors, there are no inconsequential parts of life. The stuff we watch both as a kid and as adults has an impact. It's important, and our experience of it is important. I'm so grateful to Emily and Why This Film for reminding me of that.
Oh my god!
What a gem! That was a lovely memory.
That's so sweet!
I mean, I'd like to echo a lot of what Melissa said in that, I don't have a specific memory, but I've been on the podcast quite a lot, and as we said, it's primarily because I lived with you quite often, and it was my way of getting you to spend time with me was saying we can record it.
Likewise.
But it is true that it's so nice to, because the show is about movies from our childhood, but it's about how you perceived it, and it's about, and I know there's been lots of like memories I've like dredged up, which sounds like a bad thing, but I just mean like stuff I've remembered from my childhood as a result of watching movies and being able to talk freely about like what it meant to me as a child. So yeah, it's all about nostalgia, isn't it? And it's
absolutely,
it's been fun.
And genuinely, like, how it almost, not to be like super like, you know, intense about it, but like, I personally found, I just spilled margarita all over my mouth. I personally found that a lot of how I felt about movies shaped me as a person, be that positive in the sense of brilliant role models and good ideas and progressive behaviour, or negative, Thumbelina. And I found that to be really fascinating, and I really wanted to hear about how other people felt, you know, if I was alone in that feeling or if it was a shared feeling. And it does seem from 100 episodes on to be a shared feeling about how people watch these things as kids and they were like, you know what, actually this really kickstarted my love of this, or instigated my feeling of that, or you know, I felt this as a teenager and now I don't feel that, and I feel that's a positive thing, because from that I realized that I've grown because of these reasons. And I just think that that's really important to acknowledge within yourself, and really fun to discuss with me.
Yeah, with you.
With me.
Indeed, I agree. Yeah, it's been really fun. So round of applause just from me to you,
Aw.
Emily, for 100 episodes. Well done.
Thank you.
Here's to many more.